Alex was a popular YouTuber, known for his funny and daring pranks. His channel had millions of subscribers who loved his crazy ideas and goofy sense of humor. Alex was always looking for new ways to keep his audience entertained. He believed in pushing the limits, but always with a good laugh. Every time he uploaded a new prank, it would go viral, with people sharing it everywhere. His videos brought him fame, and he was growing faster than ever. But deep down, Alex felt like he needed something bigger, something more exciting to truly stand out. One evening, while scrolling through his phone, Alex came across a video of a royal guard standing perfectly still outside one of London's famous landmarks. The guard's serious face, his military uniform, and the strict rules about not moving or showing any emotion intrigued Alex. The idea clicked instantly in his mind. What if he could prank a royal guard? The thought made him smile. No one had ever pranked one of them before, and Alex could already imagine how funny the reactions would be. He could already picture the loud laughter from his followers when they saw the video. However, pranking a royal guard wasn't going to be easy. These guards were well-trained and serious about their duty, so Alex knew he'd have to be careful. But that only made the idea more exciting. He loved challenges. He wasn't afraid to take risks if it meant creating something unique. After all, it was the risks that made his pranks so funny and thrilling. Alex spent the next few days planning the prank down to the last detail. He started researching the royal guards and how they were positioned at certain landmarks. He learned that they were always posted in front of famous places like palaces or government buildings, and that they were known for staying absolutely still, no matter what was happening around them. There were strict rules about how they should behave, and any attempt to disturb their duty would be considered disrespectful. Alex wasn't concerned about that. In his mind, it was all part of the fun. He also had to figure out how he would get close to the guard without attracting attention. Alex knew he couldn't just walk up to the guard with a camera and a horn, so he planned to blend in with the tourists visiting the landmark. The busy crowd would give him the perfect cover to sneak up to the guard, blow the horn, and capture the reaction without anyone suspecting a thing. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He was certain that this prank would be his best one yet. But Alex didn't want to rely on luck alone. He needed the right tools to make this prank successful. He thought about what would make the biggest impact and decided on a horn, one that was ridiculously loud. He knew that the louder the horn, the more shocking the prank would be. He smiled at the thought of the royal guard's surprised face when the horn suddenly blasted through the air. The reaction would be priceless. With everything planned out, Alex was ready to go. He couldn't wait to see the look on his viewers' faces when the video went live. It was going to be another big hit, and Alex was confident that this prank would be one of his most memorable yet. Alex woke up early the next day, feeling a rush of excitement. The plan he had been thinking about for days was finally coming to life. He had picked the perfect spot for his prank, a famous palace where royal guards were stationed. The place was full of tourists every day, and Alex knew this would give him plenty of cover. He wanted to make sure that his prank would be successful without drawing too much attention before the big moment. The more natural the prank seemed, the better. As he arrived at the palace, Alex was amazed at how grand it looked in real life. The palace was huge, with beautiful, well-kept gardens and tall gates that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Alex was in awe of the place and felt like he was standing in the middle of history. But he didn't have much time to admire the view. He had to stay focused on his goal. He was on a mission to prank a royal guard. Alex and his friends wandered around the area for a bit, trying to figure out the best place to position themselves. He wanted to be as close as possible to the guard without being too obvious. The royal guards were always standing in a fixed position, looking straight ahead, never moving or showing any emotion. Alex had learned that they would stand there for hours without blinking, making it almost impossible to get a reaction out of them. This made the idea of pranking one of them even more thrilling. They walked around the front of the palace, watching the guards from a distance. Some tourists were taking pictures with the guards in the background, while others just watched in awe. Alex saw how serious the guards looked, and it made him even more determined to go through with the prank. The idea of surprising one of them, someone who never showed emotion, seemed like the ultimate challenge. How would he react? Would he stay completely still, or would he break his serious composure? Alex studied the guards closely. They were posted at certain points around the palace, and Alex made sure to remember where each one was. He needed to know exactly when the guard he was targeting would be alone. He didn't want to risk having other people around when he pulled off the prank. The last thing he wanted was for it to be ruined by other tourists. His friends were equally excited about the plan. They were ready to capture every moment on camera, knowing that this prank would be amazing. Alex had even arranged for one of them to stand far off in the crowd, filming from a distance. The idea was to make sure they got the best possible footage of the royal guard's reaction. It had to be perfect. As they stood there watching the guard, Alex couldn't help but smile. He felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He knew this prank was risky, but that's what made it so appealing. The more he thought about it, the more sure he became that this was going to be a big hit. If everything went as planned, this video would go viral for sure. He imagined the views, the comments, and the attention it would get. His followers would love it. Alex checked his horn one last time, making sure it was ready. The loud noise was going to startle the guard, and he was eager to see how it all played out. The moment of truth was almost here. Alex took a deep breath and got ready to make his move. Alex and his friends spent the next few hours carefully preparing for the prank. He had the perfect spot in mind now and knew exactly what he had to do, but he couldn't help feeling the tension building up. This prank wasn't like any other he had done before. It wasn't just about making people laugh. It was about pulling off something huge, something that would surprise everyone. The guard wasn't some random person on the street. He was part of a long-standing tradition, and his job was serious. That made Alex more excited. The bigger the challenge, the better the reward. Right. He decided that the horn would be the key to making the prank work. It had to be loud enough to startle the guard, but not so loud that it would get him in trouble before the prank was even pulled off. After doing some research, Alex found the perfect horn. It wasn't just any ordinary horn. This one was designed to be incredibly loud, something that could be heard from a distance. Alex grinned as he held it in his hands, testing it out in an empty alleyway. The sound was powerful, almost deafening. It was perfect. The plan was simple. Sneak up on the guard while he was focused on his duties, blow the horn as loudly as possible, and then capture the guard's reaction on camera. Before heading out, Alex double-checked everything. He made sure his camera was fully charged, and his friends were in position to film. One of his friends, Ben, would be following at a distance to catch the full reaction, while the other, Sarah, would stay close, ready to help if things got tricky. Alex felt the excitement growing as they all got ready. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. He knew it wouldn't be easy to get close to the guard without being noticed. There were plenty of tourists walking around, and they all seemed to be fascinated by the royal guards, snapping photos and videos. Alex figured that he would blend in with the crowd, acting just like another tourist. He'd take a few pictures, casually walk up to the guard, and then, boom, the horn would blast. As they approached the royal guard, Alex's heart started to race. He could see the guard standing in his usual position, perfectly still, as if nothing in the world could move him. The uniform, the stance, it all looked so official, so serious. It was hard to believe that Alex was about to prank someone like that. But that was the thrill of it. It would be hilarious to see how the guard would react to the loud noise. Alex took a deep breath and tried to calm his nerves. He had done pranks before, but this felt different. The guard was a part of a long-standing tradition, and there was a certain respect that came with that. Still, Alex told himself it was just a prank. Nothing to get worked up about. He was just about to do something funny, and the guard would likely just move on with his duty. No harm done. They moved into position, and Alex carefully held the horn. He was just a few steps away now. He could hear the soft murmur of the crowd around him, the faint chatter of tourists snapping photos. His hands were slightly sweaty, but he was ready. It was now or never. Alex stood there for a moment, taking everything in. The Grand Palace loomed over him, and the sound of tourists chatting and snapping photos filled the air. His eyes were locked on the royal guard, who stood perfectly still, as usual, in his full uniform. Alex felt a rush of excitement mixed with a little nervousness. He had done plenty of pranks before, but this one felt different. This was bigger, more daring. He could already picture the reactions of his followers once the video went live. It was going to be huge. His friends, Ben and Sarah, were positioned a little further back, keeping an eye on the situation. Ben was holding the camera, making sure everything was ready to capture the moment. Sarah was keeping watch for any approaching security or officials, just in case things didn't go according to plan. They had everything covered. All Alex had to do now was get close to the guard and blow the horn. Taking a deep breath, Alex slowly walked toward the guard, blending in with the crowd. He tried to act as casually as possible, pretending to be just another tourist visiting the landmark. He snapped a few photos on his phone, trying to make it seem natural. He didn't want to draw attention to himself just yet. The closer he got to the guard, the more Alex could feel the tension building. The sound of his own footsteps seemed louder in his ears as he carefully navigated through the crowd, keeping his eyes fixed on the guard. The horn was hidden in his jacket, waiting for the perfect moment. When Alex was about 3 steps away from the guard, he hesitated for a split second. It was strange to be this close to someone who had such a serious role. The royal guard's face remained completely emotionless, his eyes forward, and his body perfectly still. Alex could hardly believe he was about to do this. But this was what his followers wanted. They were used to seeing him take on big challenges, and this was by far the most ambitious one yet. He couldn't back out now. With his hand gripping the horn tightly, Alex positioned himself behind the guard, taking one last look around to make sure no one was watching too closely. The timing had to be perfect. If he blew the horn too early or too late, the whole prank would be ruined. Alex waited for a few more seconds, watching the guard's every movement, or rather, lack of movement. The silence around him made everything feel even more intense. Then, without warning, Alex raised the horn to his lips and blew it with all his might. The loud sound shattered the quiet, echoing through the air. It was a sound unlike anything anyone in the crowd had expected. The tourists nearby jumped in surprise, and Alex's heart raced as he waited for the guard's reaction. The horn's sharp, sudden noise was designed to startle, and Alex could already imagine how the guard would react to being so unexpectedly interrupted. For a split second, nothing happened. The guard remained perfectly still, and Alex wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But then, to Alex's shock, the guard whirled around, his eyes flashing with surprise and his face hardening. The guard shouted something Alex couldn't quite catch, his posture shifting from calm to alert in an instant. Alex froze. He hadn't expected such a swift reaction. The seriousness of the guard's response hit him like a wave. This wasn't a laughing matter anymore. The moment the horn's loud blast echoed through the air, Alex felt a rush of adrenaline, but it quickly turned into nervous energy. He had been expecting the royal guard to react in some way, but nothing could have prepared him for how quickly everything changed. The stillness of the guard's position was replaced by immediate movement. Within a split second, the guard turned around with such speed that Alex almost didn't see it coming. His eyes, once cold and focused, now flashed with clear surprise. His face tightened, no longer showing the calm composure Alex had seen from a distance. Alex stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the guard take action. The once serene atmosphere around them suddenly felt intense. The guard shouted something Alex didn't fully understand, his voice sharp and commanding. The sound of the shout was almost as loud as the horn had been. It was clear that the prank had gone from playful to serious in the blink of an eye. The guard's posture shifted. He was no longer the statue-like figure Alex had seen earlier. His body was tense, and his eyes were fixed on Alex, sending an unmistakable message. This was no laughing matter. The tourists around them seemed to have gone quiet, too. Some were staring in disbelief, unsure of what was happening, while others slowly started pulling out their phones, recording the scene. Alex's friends, Ben and Sarah, had also gone quiet, standing off to the side, watching as things unfolded. Ben still had the camera, but even he seemed unsure of how to react. The playful vibe that had filled the air moments ago was now replaced with a sense of uncertainty. Was this still just a prank? For a moment, Alex felt like he had lost control of the situation. What had started as a fun idea to create a viral video now felt a lot more serious. The guard didn't move any closer, but he pointed directly at Alex, his finger sharp and accusing. His voice was now louder, and Alex could hear the urgency in it. Even though the words weren't clear, the tone was unmistakable. This was not a time for jokes. Alex's mind raced. He had expected a funny reaction, maybe a quick scowl or a raised eyebrow. He didn't expect the guard to react with such authority and intensity. For a brief moment, Alex wondered if he had pushed the prank too far. It wasn't as fun anymore. He knew the guard was just doing his job, but in the face of such an unexpected response, Alex realized just how serious the situation had become. People in the crowd were starting to notice what was happening. The once casual gathering of tourists had turned into something more like a spectacle. A few people were quietly whispering, others were still filming, unsure of how to interpret what was unfolding before them. Alex could feel the weight of the attention on him. This wasn't just a harmless prank anymore. It was becoming a public incident. The guard's glare didn't let up. Alex couldn't tell if he was about to say more or if he was waiting for Alex to respond. In the split second that felt like hours, Alex realized he wasn't sure what to do next. He had never imagined the prank would cause such a strong reaction. But now, there was no turning back. The situation had escalated, and Alex had to figure out how to handle it. With his heart still racing, Alex took a step back, his hands slightly shaking. He had thought this prank would be funny. Now, he was starting to realize that the seriousness of the situation had completely changed everything. As Alex stood there, staring at the royal guard, he realized that the situation was quickly slipping out of his hands. The guard's glare seemed to pierce right through him, and the seriousness in his voice was undeniable. Alex's mind raced, trying to come up with a way to lighten the mood, but nothing seemed right. The prank, which had started as a funny idea for a viral video, suddenly felt far too real. The intensity in the air was thick, and Alex could feel the weight of the guard's stare on him. Around them, the crowd was beginning to take notice. Whispers rippled through the tourists, some of them pulling out their phones to capture the drama unfolding before them. What was once a calm, picturesque scene of tourists visiting a historic landmark had now become the center of attention. Alex could feel all eyes on him, and the more he tried to think of a way to fix the situation, the more nervous he became. This wasn't how he had imagined things would go. The royal guard stood tall, his posture still stiff and unyielding. His hand was now resting on the hilt of his sword, and his fingers twitched slightly, though he didn't make any sudden moves. Alex noticed how composed the guard still was, even after being startled by the horn. It was impressive. Alex had expected the guard to show some sign of surprise or even a little laughter. But instead, the guard remained as serious as ever, his presence more intimidating than Alex had anticipated. In the background, Alex could hear Sarah and Ben, who had stayed back from the scene, trying to figure out how to help. Ben whispered something to Sarah, likely discussing whether they should step in or if they should just let the situation play out. Alex wasn't sure what they were saying, but he could hear the concern in their voices. He felt the pressure mounting. This was a moment he couldn't take back. Despite the tension, Alex knew he couldn't just walk away. He had to try and defuse the situation. He took a deep breath and forced himself to speak. "Hey, look, I'm really sorry," Alex said, trying to sound sincere. "It was just a joke. I didn't mean any disrespect. It was supposed to be funny." He smiled nervously, hoping the guard would understand, but the expression on the guard's face remained unmoved. The royal guard didn't reply immediately. His eyes didn't leave Alex's, as though he was sizing him up, deciding what to do next. Alex felt a wave of unease wash over him. He had been so focused on the prank and getting the perfect reaction for the video that he hadn't truly considered the potential consequences of pranking someone who held such an important role. The thought that the guard might not just walk away from this, but actually report him to someone crossed his mind. Would he be kicked out of the palace? Or worse, would security step in? The moment felt like it stretched on forever. Alex could feel his hands trembling slightly, the adrenaline from the prank now replaced with uncertainty. It wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't a harmless joke. He was standing face to face with someone who had the authority to make things very difficult for him. Finally, the guard spoke, his voice calm but firm. "This is not acceptable," he said. The tone was clear, and the message was unmistakable. Alex felt his stomach drop. This wasn't the playful reaction he had imagined at all. In that moment, Alex realized that the fun had ended, and the real consequences of his prank were now starting to take shape. Alex felt the weight of the guard's words settle in his chest. "This is not acceptable." The voice was calm, but the authority behind it made Alex's heart race. The guard didn't shout, but his presence was enough to make Alex feel like he was in deep trouble. Alex had pranked a lot of people in the past, but this wasn't like any of those times. This was a royal guard, someone who was trained to stay calm and composed in even the most challenging situations. Alex wasn't sure what would happen next, but the last thing he wanted was to get himself into serious trouble. The crowd around them had grown even more curious. People had stopped whispering and were now openly watching the exchange between Alex and the guard. Some tourists had lowered their phones, sensing the tension in the air. Others continued recording, oblivious to the fact that the situation had shifted from funny to serious. Alex could feel their eyes on him, and the pressure of the moment made his palms sweaty. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The royal guard just stood there, unwavering, watching Alex closely. Alex wasn't sure if the guard was waiting for him to say something else, or if he was simply deciding what to do next. It felt like time had slowed down. Alex had no idea how to make this right. He had pulled pranks before, but this one was bigger than anything he'd ever done. He never thought that a simple joke would lead to such a serious situation. Trying to keep his voice steady, Alex spoke again. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, his words rushing out. "It was just a joke. I thought it would make people laugh. I'm sorry if I've upset you. I really didn't think this would go this far." The guard didn't immediately respond. He didn't even shift his stance. It was like he was weighing Alex's words carefully. Alex could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had to get out of this situation before it got worse. But as much as he wanted to get away, he knew he had to face the consequences of his actions. "I understand," the guard finally said, his tone still firm but a little softer. "But you must understand that this is not the time or place for such behavior. You cannot disturb the duty of a royal guard." The guard's eyes remained locked on Alex's, but Alex could see the faintest hint of a sigh in his posture. It seemed like the guard was not as angry as Alex had feared, but he was still serious. Alex nodded quickly, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. He had been lucky that the guard hadn't made the situation worse. But Alex wasn't completely off the hook yet. The seriousness of the moment was still lingering. The crowd had quieted, and some people were still watching the scene unfold, unsure of what would happen next. Just then, Alex felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around to find Sarah and Ben standing behind him. They both looked nervous, but Ben gave him a small nod, signaling that they should leave before things escalated further. Alex wasn't sure if the situation was completely over yet, but it seemed like the guard wasn't going to take further action. For now, at least. "Thank you," Alex said to the guard, his voice quieter now, almost apologetic. "I promise I won't do anything like this again." The guard gave him one last look before he turned back to his post, resuming his perfectly still stance. Alex couldn't help but feel a little relieved, but also embarrassed. What had started as a fun prank had turned into an uncomfortable situation, and he was grateful that it hadn't ended worse. As Alex turned away and began to walk with Sarah and Ben, the weight of the moment finally started to lift. The crowd slowly went back to their usual activities, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped serious consequences. He had learned a valuable lesson that day. Pranks were all fun and games until they went too far. As Alex walked away from the Royal Guard, he couldn't help but feel a weight in his chest. The excitement of the prank had vanished completely, replaced by a deep sense of embarrassment. His friends, Ben and Sarah, walked beside him in silence for a moment. No one knew exactly what to say, but the tension was obvious. Alex kept replaying the moment in his head. The sound of the horn, the shock on the guard's face, and the way everything had escalated so quickly. It felt like the world had stopped for those few minutes, and now that it was over, Alex was left wondering if he'd made a huge mistake. "Man, that was intense," Ben finally said, breaking the silence. "I thought the guard was going to blow up on you. You got lucky, dude." His voice had a mix of relief and still a hint of disbelief. "I'm glad it didn't get any worse. That could have gone really badly." Alex nodded but didn't respond right away. He had expected people to laugh when they saw the video, but now he wasn't so sure it was worth it. The guard had shown such control, and Alex realized just how important his role was. He hadn't thought about the responsibility the guards carried until now. They weren't just standing there to be part of the tourists' experience. They were upholding a tradition, guarding one of the most important places in the country. It was a role that deserved respect, not a loud prank. As they walked further from the scene, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw that a few of his followers had already commented on the prank video. Some of the comments were funny, but others were more serious, questioning if Alex had crossed the line. "This isn't a joke, man. Show respect," one comment read. Another said, "Hope you don't get into trouble for this." Those messages made Alex pause. He'd always known his pranks could be risky, but he hadn't considered how far a harmless joke could really go. Alex glanced over at Sarah, who had been quiet since they walked away. "You okay?" he asked. Sarah nodded but gave him a small smile. "Yeah, I think we're okay. But maybe next time, we should think things through a bit more before pulling pranks like that." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I honestly didn't mean to disrespect anyone. It was just supposed to be funny, but now it feels wrong. I'm not sure if it was worth it." Ben laughed nervously. "I get it. But hey, you didn't get in real trouble. The guard seemed to understand that you didn't mean any harm. I think you're off the hook." Alex wasn't so sure. He knew the guard had shown restraint, but there was still a sense of discomfort in his gut. The idea that a joke could make someone feel disrespected or uncomfortable wasn't something Alex had thought about before. It was a valuable lesson. He realized now that some pranks were better left unsaid, especially when they involved people who were serious about their duties. By the time they reached the edge of the crowd, Alex felt a little more at ease. The guard had not taken further action, and there was no sign that security had gotten involved. The crowd was starting to disperse, and the tension in the air seemed to have lifted. Still, Alex couldn't shake the thought that this prank had gone too far. He was grateful things hadn't ended worse, but he promised himself he'd be more thoughtful in the future. As the trio made their way back to their car, Alex took one last look at the palace and the spot where the royal guard had stood. He smiled, though it was a little bittersweet. The prank may have been a fail, but it had taught him something important. The world wasn't just a stage for his jokes. People had lives, responsibilities, and roles that deserved respect. And from now on, Alex would think twice before pulling a stunt like that again.